Have you ever left a conversation feeling diminished even though you spoke your truth? Have you felt that familiar tightness at the base of your throat as if each sentence pulled you farther from yourself? Do you notice people around you interrupting, speaking louder, laughing over you, and somehow your responses only make the room louder and your presence smaller? The image is clear. Your voice stretches thin, your hands tangle, the air tastes metallic, and there is a pressure behind your eyes like a clock winding down. You have been taught to feel silence to prove worth, to justify, to explain, to be seen. But what if all that doing was the real problem? What if the move that changes an interaction is not another explanation, but the deliberate choice to remain quiet, to let silence do the heavy lifting for you? The thesis I want to place before you is blunt and unsettling and liberating at the same time. The most effective influence is often what you do not say. Thinkers who study power and presence have always noted that those who rush to fill a pause show the shape of their insecurity. Today, you will learn to turn that insecurity into authority by mastering the art of silent persuasion. Stay with me and watch how absence becomes influence. If this resonates, subscribe and watch the next segment where we trace a thinker who made silence into a public weapon. Are you ready to learn how staying quiet can actually pull the strings of a room? It feels natural to speak when offended, to match volume with volume, to counterattack with detail. Picture a meeting room where someone snaps your idea as if it is paper, where a cousin laughs too loud at your story at the dinner table, where a partner interrupts you mid-sentence and the house hums with indifference. You taste coffee gone bitter, you feel fabric scrape at your wrist, you hear a cut of silence that is not empty but full of judgment. The probable response is instant defense, talking, urgent, hot reply that seeks to repair dignity. But that reflex creates a loop. You speak quickly, you reveal a map of your doubts, and the other person reads you like a ledger. Social environments reward noise and punish paused authority. Yet this noisy logic is a trap because it believes power equals volume. It mistakes the thrill of being heard for permanence of influence. Names show the pattern in every venue. In the office, Daniel dominates conversations by flooding them. At family dinners, Marta insists on explanations until arguments spiral. In classrooms, Noah and Aisha fill voids with anecdotes that drown quieter insights. Their strategies work only because we keep playing by the same rules. The small sensory details are crucial here. The dry throat, the echo in the chest, the way the light on the table suddenly seems to pick you out and highlight your error. A short quote clarifies the sentiment. The inversion of our instinct, the one who rushes to explain, reveals what he fears losing. Marcus is the figure I return to as an example of a modern practical philosopher, a person who treated silence as an aesthetic and a weapon. Not a mythical Ubermensch, but a grounded operator. Marcus studied rhetoric and ancient Stoicism, yet rejected constant speech as a virtue. He believed presence could be louder than words. His biography is simple in outline. He grew up in a household where debate was the air everyone breathed, where his mother Elena spoke first and often, and his father Ravi measured respect by rebuttal. Marcus learned to withdraw, at first to survive, then to learn. He practiced observation in bazaars, smelling spices, watching hawkers time their pauses, listening to how silence made offers seem less desperate and more desirable. His experiments were small. He would remain quiet at a council meeting until a loud member exhausted himself, and then, in a rare, clear sentence, Marcus would name the insight everyone missed. History remembers his phrase, not for poetry, but for effect. Silent authority. Marcus never sought to be cruel. He sought to be precise. The term he favored was presence, not absence, which framed silence as positive rather than passive. His short maxims circulated among a small group of mentees, including Sophia and Daniel, who carried his approach into boards and bedrooms and public squares. This figure is not an idol to worship, but a guide to practice, a human who converted a cultural disadvantage into strategic advantage. Let us push that inversion further. Why does silence unsettle people? Why does not speaking feel like a violation to others? Think of the brain reacting in real time when a conversation pauses. The amygdala, the primitive alarm center, reads gaps as ambiguity, and ambiguity as potential threat. People prefer predictable scripts because scripts keep the herd moral machinery humming smoothly. When you break the script by offering nothing, the room projects meanings onto you. It fills the vacuum with guesses, which often reveal more than declarations ever could. Two small cases illustrate this. In a staff review, Sophia sat through a tirade and did not answer. The manager first assumed guilt, then gradually exposed contradictions as he tried to force a confession. In a neighborhood dispute, Noah shut down when provoked and watched how the other party, starved of reaction, filled the silence with escalating claims until they exposed their own weakness. Think of silence like a mirror. It reflects the interlocutor, not you. Repetition helps here. Say the words silence, presence, and watch how the concept reorients your body. A small breath anchors you like an anchor in a storm. A rhetorical question returns now. Are you ready to be read instead of read to? Now we will sharpen the idea of silence into a usable concept. Silence as an armature of influence. Imagine silence not as blank space, but as a calibrated instrument you tune.
The idea key is short and cutting like a scalpel, or long and steady like a dam. The idea key is unpredictability. The more you are expected to speak, the more your restraint becomes a puzzle. And humans hate unresolved puzzles, so they work to solve them, often in ways that expose their assumptions. Use repetition for emphasis. Remain silent, then offer a single line that reframes the debate. Use presence to displace authority. Let your posture and gaze do the heavy semantic work. Too many cases demonstrate the move. In a negotiation, Elena paused after the counteroffer, her mouth closed, and the other side immediately raised the bid because the dialogic pressure forced them to act. In a family argument, Marta stopped answering probes, sat upright, looked at faces calmly, and the barrage dissolved into awkward silence, revealing who truly wanted resolution and who wanted drama. The moral here is that silence transfers the cognitive burden to the other party. A rhetorical citation sharpens this. Marcus often quoted an old aphorism that a watchful mouth gives more away than a silent one keeps. How does this reframe change your immediate behavior? Will you still see silences as threats or as strategic openings? To make this robust, we need psychology to back it up and to root tactics in mechanisms. The amygdala triggers fight or flight when conversation turns unpredictable. The prefrontal cortex tries to reconstruct narratives to regain control. And social projection fills gaps with assumptions tied to the observer's ego. Projection means people read their own fears into voids you create. Social proof plays its part when a table of listeners mirrors each other and escalates reaction to fill silence. These are not magical processes, they are cognitive plumbing, and once named, they can be redirected. For example, when someone interrupts to dominate, their behavior often arises from an anxious need to maintain dominance, which, when you hold silence, becomes an exposed strategy they cannot sustain. Here is an example of manipulation turned visible. A supervisor, Daniel, used flattery, then fast questions to trap juniors into agreement. When one junior person resisted and simply observed Simon, the supervisor became unglued and offered concessions aimed at regaining control. That concession is the prize of patient silence, because the other party, in trying to end the ambiguity, gives up leverage. Data from social psychology shows that uncertain information triggers information-seeking behaviors which manifest as verbal overcompensation. In simple terms, your quietness invites the other to overplay their hand. If you are practical, this is where tactics arrive. Treat silence as a set of tools, not a moral stance. The toolbox contains 4 moves: observation, pause, anchor, and unpredictability. Observation means you listen and collect details. The rasp of breath, the foot that taps, the throat clearing, those micro signals tell you when pressure will break. Pause means you withhold response for an intentional interval, long enough to be felt but short enough not to signal resignation. Anchor means parascindy.
Unpredictability means sometimes you break pattern by speaking in a new key so the listener cannot anticipate your rhythm. Now, watch a scene take place, a primary practice conversation between Marcus and a partner. We will show 6 exchanges to map the rhythm. Marcus says quietly, "Why are you pushing for this now?" Partner replies loudly, "Because it matters and you need to see that." Marcus remains silent and looks down, then up slowly. Partner asks again, "Are you even listening?" Marcus inhales and says, "I am listening, but I will not be hurried." Partner laughs nervously. "Are you refusing to argue?" Marcus holds his gaze and remains still for a beat. Partner lowers voice and asks, "What do you want then?" Marcus says one clear thing, "I want honesty," and then returns to silence. Partner finally offers a concession. "I can do that." This exchange shows how silence makes scarcity of words a commodity. Secondary dialogues in less central scenes should exist too for practice. A quick 2-line example between Ravi and Aisha in a corridor. Ravi says, "We need an answer now," and Aisha replies, "Not yet," which creates a small observed change in tempo in the narrative of the workplace. Across these interactions include sensory markers: the tick of a clock, the warmth of sunlight on the table, the metallic tang of coffee, the friction of fabric under fingertips, the dry echo of a small room. All these reinforce presence without words. Pause here and consider a moment of tension when silence is mistaken for surrender. This is a trap, and it is dangerous because it erodes agency when not intentional. The first tension moment describes this misstep in 2 compact paragraphs. The room thins, and your silence slams like a door shut, not in strategy, but in exhaustion. People interpret this silence as resignation and move on, leaving you unseen and unheard. Your body remembers defeat. The jaw clenches, the belly hollows, the voice thins until you are nobody in a conversation that once mattered. Recovery from this requires naming the silence out loud and reclaiming tone, but that step must happen deliberately. Another tension moment unfolds when silence incites projection that becomes hostile. A pause intended to observe is read as contempt, and someone lashes out with accusations. You feel that burn in the chest, the heat of someone pointing, and the room's air becomes sharp and sour. That is when calm observation must include boundaries. You state a short sentence that stops the escalation and restore the frame. The key is to avoid collapsing into long apologies that invite more attack. The third tension moment is subtler and longer, the slow suffocation of silence used as avoidance over days. Relationships fray when one partner consistently withdraws to avoid conflict, and absence becomes an accusation. The house smells of old coffee, messages go unreplied, and the emotional bandwidth narrows. This is the silence of resignation, not strategy, and countering it demands repair rituals, honest admission, and timed conversations to reestablish trust. Each of these tension moments teaches you how silence can wound as well as win. A brief backstory will root this in human texture. Marcus once failed spectacularly in a public forum where his silence was read as indifference.
and a rival used that reading to take his role. He felt the humiliation physically, the taste of copper in his mouth, the warmth on his neck, the little itch behind the ear where adrenaline pooled. For months, he overcompensated by flooding rooms with words until exhaustion rewired his habits. He then retreated to a practice of deliberate observation, sitting in cafes for hours, writing down breaths, the tempo of baristas, the cadence of laughter. He asked questions of strangers and then held his tongue to see what filled the gaps. It took time to translate that practice back into leadership. Eventually, he returned to the public sphere carrying a new posture, not brittle but calm. He did not use silence to punish but to clarify. When he spoke, his sentences landed like stones in water, and ripples rearranged agendas. That arc shows how silence must be learned with care, and how personal history can inform practice. Now return to tactics in applied settings. Here are precise patterns to try in meetings and intimate settings and how to test them. In a meeting, start with a short declarative sentence, then stop and hold eye contact for 3 seconds longer than usual. In a negotiation, offer a concession and then remain silent to let the other party fill the gap. At home, when a partner presses a sensitive subject, respond with a measured phrase, then suggest a break and use observation time to list what emotion likely drives the pressure. Test unpredictability by altering your cadence in small ways, occasionally smiling when you usually frown, to dislodge anticipatory responses. These tactics are not manipulative when used to clarify values and to create honest space. They become manipulative when used to shame or coerce. You must pair silence with clear ethical boundaries. When our ego drifts toward using silence to win at all costs, the moral cost is immediate and the social cost long-term. If this teaching has landed, then it is time for you to engage. If this resonated and you recognize the shame of past silences, it is not a failure. It is a universal moment. Share one short line in the comments beginning with the word silence, describing the last time you held your tongue and wished you had not. Your single sentence helps others see patterns and helps me curate real stories for the next videos. I read comments and highlight vivid examples to teach from. Your vulnerability will be useful to someone else and to our community. This is not homework. It is a small act of practice and naming. After you leave a comment, come back and watch the next segment where I will break down 3 short exercises you can do tomorrow to build intentional silence into your daily life. Your contribution matters and helps shape future lessons. As we close, consider the arc from pain to practice. You came in with the memory of being unheard and perhaps ashamed. And now you have a reframed tool, a disciplined silence that is expressive rather than empty. Remember the neuroscientific frame: when you choose deliberate quiet, you are shifting cognitive load to others and inviting projections that can be exposed. Remember Marcus and the way observation refined his authority. Remember the 4 tactical moves: observation, pause, anchor, unpredictability, and remember to name the ethic that guides you. Avoid weaponizing silence as punishment. Use it as clarifying space. Give yourself a month of small experiments. Mark days in a journal when you practiced silence with intention, and note what changed in others and in you. At 3 months, you will notice a subtle rearrangement. People will treat your sentences as rare commodities, and your presence will alter conversations before you speak. If you want to go deeper, subscribe for guided exercises and sign up to the community where we practice presence in weekly challenges. If this has meaning for you, comment "I choose" and commit to 1 week of deliberate silence. The last thing to remember is simple and final. Words matter less than stance. Choose quiet to wield clarity, not to hide. The loudest authority is not always the most convincing. The most convincing is the one who knows when not to speak.